to be so precise. Calling this meeting to order. We have a quorum. Meeting has duly been called. Appropriate notice has been given. If you would please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I have an approval for the agenda?
Move we approve the agenda and the minutes from the November 16th and November 28th meetings.
Second.
I have Jason and Daniel. Anybody have any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Miss Rose and Miss Lawrence, come on up for the academic report. Miss Rose, I'm sorry.
Thank y'all for coming to us tonight. Got some information. We just finished up our science interims, and we're going to cover a little bit of that. And I say a little bit because that's all we got from the state on this first round. But I am going to show you what you got and talk about some of the benefits we got from that. And then Ms. Lawrence is going to come in, and it's really exciting information. It's you know, you've heard a lot about the PLC and that work going on here at the district, and we've got some real life examples of what's going on. She's got some information for you to show you kind of what our teachers are doing, what our leadership's doing, and how they're using it in classrooms to take our instruction and to monitor student growth and learning. So we're going to cover the science first real quick. Testing at a glance and
Mm-hmm.
There we go. I'm just going to give you we got very little information. So this is our new Atlas platform, and they told us we're kind of building this plane as we fly it, right? We know it's a transition year into this new testing program. So as we get through it, so we were able to get in on the science interims. That's the only subject that gave us interim tests for this school year. This was our first one. It opened up this last month and closed Monday. And this is our results, and you'll see in the blue, grades 3 up through biology. This is a comparison of our scores versus the state average, and you'll see we're above the state across every grade level. So that's some good news, right?
That is good.
So we celebrated that today. We talked about that in our district leadership meeting this morning. We celebrated that. You know, we'd like to get information and then take it and see what we can do with it and try to adjust our teaching and learning to that. However, right now, that's pretty much all we get. I'll show you one more thing we do get on the individual student side. This is a student report. I blurred out the name. This is an 8th grade student. So this is what I mean by being a little bit basic right now. We do have some more guidance coming up on the next one. It's over on the right. The Arkansas score is 91. The Mountain Home District is a 93 with a plus or minus 1. So that's a little bit of room for error, saying if the kids took it again, they would possibly score 1 point higher, 1 point lower, somewhere in the middle. Over in the middle, on the big blue bar, you see the child score. They scored a 111 on this, and then it has a plus or minus 11, which once again means they could score 11 points higher or lower if they took it again, or somewhere in between. That's a pretty big variation there. So that's, you know, that's kind of a little bit scary in a way, but then again, we only know so little about it. That's all we got to go on right now. We did get a little more knowledge today. Ms. Kemp sat in on a Zoom session with Desi and Atlas on a little bit of information on, and what they told us was that, as you'll see, this goes out to, if I go back to that last one, you see I coded it up to 200. That's what the score range is going to be, anywhere from 0 to 200. And they said that's going to be the limits, the maximum, minimum. Within that, we talked about that, showed you an example of standard error of measure, and then the spring scores will also have a spring interim that'll come up in February. And when we take it, they're telling us we are going to get a little more data from that. They said we'll get some cut scores on that one actually, and then even get some performance levels and reporting categories. They're going to break it down a little further. Not to mention, we'll be able to take the spring scores, overall totals, and compare it with our fall score we just had, just kind of see if we're progressing throughout the year.
So we could get to 200 Is that, so it's not a percentage of at or above or exceeding, it's?
Yeah, yeah, it's a 200-point scale score is set and is expected to stay the same in the future. So that's like the maximum it's going to get, whether you're in third grade or up to 10th grade biology, which I have a little trouble with. It doesn't really make sense to me, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
It's kind of an odd scenario, but we will dig more into that and see as we progress on and get more information. But 0 to 200 scale scores, you know, I'd like to know more information about that. Right now, that's all we have.
That makes no sense.
I know how, we're a third grader versus a 10th grader. Yeah.
Well, and, okay, so if it's 96 and
You're
it's,
above
if that's less than
50%.
50%, like, so what?
Well, now 200 would be for the end of the year. That would be the goal, I'm guessing, for the end of the year. If it does the variation, like a kid starts, my understanding was you started on the test and then the next time you took it, it would be just for you, based on what you can do. So you're trying to go up.
The Atlas in general is supposed to be adaptive, yes.
That's, thank
So
you.
so they're just building,
Yes.
it's a building,
That's
so,
what we think. I'm just telling you,
That's what
I'm
we
just a
think.
little cautious of it right now because we know so little about it. And they have told us it is adaptive, and I know when we looked at that in the math and the ELA parts earlier, that was a conversation we've been given from the state, and I would assume the science is the same way. It should adapt and build on that. And so we'll know a lot more when the spring test rolls around, and we get to break that out, and it gives us this, they promise us there'll be some more information on it then.
So is it used in other states, or?
No.
Atlas, no.
I mean, I know with Jason, it seems like we're a long way from the top there.
Yeah, you know, and it even said they recommend not sending even those individual reports home to parents because it makes very little sense and it leaves you more questions than answers. And as you see right now, this was our same, like, looking at it kind of cross-eyed at it when we seen it. So we're gonna hold those, of course, or like I said, it tells us there's basically recommended not sending the individual reports home. So we're gonna keep those in-house and just use those to measure growth when we get the spring version of this and hopefully get more guidance throughout the year to kind of make a little more sense too on the scoring.
so what do we have to do to get some clarity on
There's
how this?
nothing to do. I mean,
So here's your test, your kids need to take this test, but you get to interpret the results?
right now.
For
That
right
makes no
now, they
sense.
promised us they'll give us, and this is the message we got, I've got it in here, they promised us that they will give us this summer, after the test,
So
of
after
course,
it's all done.
and early fall, they will have all this broken down where we can take it with individual categories and strands within it to see where our strengths and weaknesses were. But that will be after the first round of testing, of course. So everyone kind of be, like I said, they're building this thing as we fly.
If I think about adaptive, I would think by mid-year, you'd want to be at 100. I mean, that's just
That's kind
simplistic,
of-
and I
that's-
may be completely off. But if you think, you know, halfway through the year, 100, goal being 200 by the end of the year. But I could be completely.
Yeah,
I'm the
that's a,
same way, that's the only way it can make
Enough.
sense to me if you're looking at individual students.
If you consider
It's like we
that.
go Throughout the year, so.
I'm assuming it's not a percentage, right?
Yeah.
Because
This is not,
I think
for
the
sure.
percentage is, it doesn't make
So,
sense, but.
When you
No,
look
the
at
whole state's under
biology,
50%.
that's an end of
Right.
course.
Right.
So by the end of the course,
They should have it nailed, yeah.
200. Which, I mean, now, I'm just throwing that out there. But, and I had a little person in the audience helping me out on that. Thank you, Ms. Russell, for reminding us of that.
We're gonna keep teaching kids.
Let's just do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we're gonna keep teaching.
Hmm.
But, and I will say, one of the big things, and I know some of the principals have mentioned it, Ms. Camp mentioned it yesterday, one of the big things from doing this too is the exposure to the platform.
Mhm.
She's seen a big uptick in the number of teachers now that they've gotten exposure to administering this test. Now they're jumping back in that classroom tool more and building their own assessments to check for understanding on all the different subjects they're teaching. So that has been a really big positive. Just like we've seen with the writing pilot we volunteered to take where a lot of people didn't. You know, we've just learned so many things, try to stay ahead of the game on that and be better informed so we can help our kids learn and be assessed at a
And this was
reasonable.
optional? I mean, schools did not have to do this one?
Is my understanding, yes. I think on the science though, but, so we had about average around 27,000 students in the state of Arkansas took these. And when I was calculating, crunching my numbers, that was about 2/3 of the total of at each grade level, 27,000 each grade level. So. All right. I would love to give you more information on it. That's literally everything I can give you right now. That's all they're giving us, but we will keep teaching the kids and keep growing.
Yeah.
Take away from the budget average across the board right
That's
now.
always good.
That's what I
It's
got
always
from
great.
that.
Well, they're not below state average.
All right. Carol, Ms. Lawrence, and she's gonna talk to you about some great things going on there.
Okay, don't panic, I just have one little handout that goes with,
Thank you.
to help
Do you
my
have
slide
these?
make sense.
Is it in
Don't panic.
Thank you.
I'm fast.
You want me to hold yours?
But I know, it's very, very timely. Thank you, so I just wanted on one.
Thank you.
Okay. But I feel like if you don't have this, it's not what it's gonna be, it's not working. Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about just the day-to-day piece of how our collaborative teams are working, and how that work is culminating in a standards-based report card assessment for our first and second graders at Nelson Wilkes. Kindergarten also has a standards-based report card. So if y'all remember when you came to Nelson Wilkes a year ago, and we really dug into that student success plan, and y'all got to see kind of how that data was building, well, this is kind of a take two, and the data wall, you'll just, I know, don't let it blow your mind. It's a whole lot of color. But, and I have a thing where I gravitate to a screen, so I'll try to stand still. But our data wall is how we are tracking how our students are doing on our common formative assessments, and those are rolling into how they're doing overall on the essential standard. So the reason I printed the report card is because if you look on quarter two, let's look at the literacy quarter two, you're gonna see there's gonna be 6 boxes that you're gonna notice that are being assessed. And if you look across the screen at the top here, for the literacy, you're gonna see 6 different colored boxes here. One, the green, you go all the way across. There's 6 different categories of, we call those our essential standards. And all the boxes going down that have the green, the yellow, the red, and the blue, that is how the students are doing on what we call common formative assessment. And so our teachers have built their, we call them CFAs for short, and those CFAs are basically a learning target where we stop and see how they're doing on the standard and see if they are showing mastery, if they're showing they need extra support, maybe they've already got it, they need some extension. And so that's why you see the rainbow of colors. So like if you look down, I took out the student names, you'll see the students on that very first take. If you look at that first box of decoding, you've got 2 greens, a yellow, a red, it looks like Skittles up there. That's how they did on that very first CFA. So what the teachers are doing is they're working through that essential standard all quarter, and they take a pause at what we call learning target, they give the CFA, and then they're seeing how their students are doing on that. So the reason I'm showing you the data wall is because that process has been going on even in the upper levels. That's not exclusive to Nelson Wilkes, that's a K-12 process we're doing with our collaborative teams. They're meeting within their content areas or grade levels. So the reason I'm showing you this is because we are trying to move in the direction of a data wall for a couple different reasons, and that's why they thought y'all might be interested in this. The great thing about a data wall that's different from that student success plan card that we showed you is you can tell a teacher doing this can see her class at a glance or his class at a glance. So instead of having to go in, the SSP really tracks beginning of year, middle of year, end of year. This is tracking constant daily progress of the student. So we're not waiting until middle of the year to see if they're needing student services, are they needing intervention, are they needing extension. I mean, you can tell just by looking at this, if you're working across the screen, if you want to pick one particular student, like even if you're taking that top row student, student 1, you can see working across that, the divide, that turquoise band starts your math assessment. So if you want to see how that student's doing in literacy, you work across to that turquoise band. How they're doing in math is to the right of the turquoise band. And so same with math, you can see on the report card, they've got 5 different essential standards they're working through second quarter. There are 5 categories of CFAs they're tracking that entire quarter. Our teachers often will look through the first time they give it, and they'll look at their reds, and they'll pull those students, they'll do some kind of intervention, a reteach. If it's a deficit skill, they may have to go lower than a reteach and try to build a deficit skill. But that's the work they're doing, and that's what I need win time that we have built in every day to their schedule. And so our teachers are using this. They meet with their pod, we call it a pod, once a week. And if they have just given a CFA, and this data wall is, they all have their data walls up, they can, and they share. If you look at the bottom, this is a workbook for this pod. This is 4 teachers that are working through a workbook together. So every teacher down at the bottom has their own tab. So we can go, if you want to see a different teacher's data wall, you can see that's hers. Quarter 2, here's another one. I had hers pulled up already, quarter 2. But this is, I think that's quarter 1. That's back to quarter 2. So they can compare, if one teacher's class had a lot more reds or even yellows than another class, they talk through instructional strategies at that point. Another thing they're doing, because they do, the pods have common planning time and they have common win time, they can divide students up among the teachers, and that teacher can reteach the group. You know, this teacher can take the group that is red, that needs that extensive support. This teacher could work with the ones that are on grade level that might need just a little more reteach. The kids that need extension, this is how we're able to start working through that extension piece. And so, I'll be honest, when we start, every pod in my building is doing some form of a data template. This is obviously my favorite because it's the most,
Descriptive.
well, it's the most exact one, and even the way it's laid out with the essential standards at the top, not all of my data templates that are in the building are quite this clear. So we are moving in this direction building wide. We're about 60% there. So we've got a little push to do before next school year. So that's what we're working on. Teachers' feedback on this would be, you don't know how great it is until you do it. This pod has 3 teachers, 4 teachers. One of the teachers was not very excited about having to keep up with this. We're already doing that SSP, we're still doing that. It starts feeling like double data entry. But what you realize once you start doing this is not beginning of the year data, middle of the year, end of the year. This is your daily class at a glance for the second quarter. How are they doing? And because you can see your class at a glance, you can see immediately what students need support, what students need extension, and then your conversation. The pods that are running the data walls like this have the best collaborative instructional conversations for sure, because they stick to this. They are also taking, this is all just exactly what you see on that SSP card. This is broken down that y'all saw at that meeting that when y'all came to Nelson Wilkes last year. And so there's actually, because they like the CFA tracking so much, they want to see that SSP, BOI, MOI, EOI at a flash as a class. Because the way we have it now, you have to individually click on each SSP card. This, you don't individually click on anything per student, your whole class comes up at a glance. And so again, you can see immediately where your support needs to go. And I mean, if you're teaching too fast or teaching too slow, it really does help them pace how they're going through those essential standards and how they're hitting their learning targets. So it's a lot of information. The number one thing I do to support them is try to find extra time for them to work together, which is not always easy, but that is the number one thing they ask for. We just need more time to work together. So we try not to only enter data at collaborative team times. If we're only entering data, we're never having those instructional strategy conversations. So it doesn't always happen. We try to come to the table with the data updated. Again, there's grace in that. Some weeks it doesn't happen. sometimes they tell me we need a day to enter data, and then they
That's
bring
what I
all
was
their
wondering.
stuff, and they bring their data and they work on it. But that is kind of the process we're in, with collaborative teams, and just where we are with assessment and kind of where we're moving. So we've had some really, they're getting their quarter 3 ready. This is what it looks like before they ever start. So they've adapted their tabs at the top to match what they're going to be working through for quarter 3. And this one's ready to go. So this will start populating in January. But it has been fun to watch. Like I felt really guilty about it, if I'm honest, because I was like, I don't have to do that well. Please do that well. And so I had 2 teachers that went last summer to the Little Rock training, and came back, and they've kind of been the leaders. And then I have a first grade teacher that just loves curriculum, and she was already leading her pot here. So those groups are going really strong. The other teachers are doing a lot of data work. It just isn't pulled together quite as nicely, so we're working on pulling it all together so that when we want to look at it in leadership or something like that, it's just a lot more accessible to get to. So,
Good stuff. Thank you for sharing.
any
That's a lot.
questions?
Yes, ma'am, I do have one. Each teacher will assess all their own students the same way,
Yes.
but from one teacher to the next, is there a standard, is that
So
assessment the
I
same
did-
for each teacher?
Okay, that actually is on the next,
Okay,
It's a great
not
question.
to go too far into this.
because you can compare how the
But
different students in
the
one
way
class are
they
doing.
handle that is they've done proficiency scales. And so all of these links that you see on here are the CFAs that are running across that data wall. And so they have determined, if you look at how they run those proficiency scales, they spend a lot of time trying to decide what the markers were gonna be for the, and I didn't clarify this, N meets support, P proficiency, M meets expectations, and E is exceeding. So they, and I will be honest, this is where some of the hardest work is the proficiency scales, and agreeing on what word merits a P, what word merits an M. They've gotten very careful about what they give an E to, because they feel like if you're exceeding, it needs to be every time, not just one time. You can't just do that one day and then fall back to just proficient.
Sure.
So those are a lot of the conversations we've had in collaborative teams that I wouldn't say they get a little bit heated sometimes. Early elementary teachers, just by stereotype, are very nurturing, and they go usually too easy on the kids. They don't want any kiddo to be like crying because it's too hard, or so a lot of times the hard part is keeping it high, keeping that rigor high, and that's where we've got to get better. But that's where the work comes to kind of answer your question. That's how you keep that alignment grade-wide, is because they have to be following the proficiency skills they set as a grade. And then if they don't like it, so like some of my teachers don't always like the CFAs that we're working with, then we've got to come to the table again and decide, what do you not like about it? Is it too easy? Is it too hard? Is it too many questions? A lot of these just have like 3 or 4 questions on them, the CFAs. They're not long.
Judy,
And maybe
what
they
is a
don't like
CFA?
do what?
What is a CFA?
The common formative
Common
assessment. So
formative
every
assessment.
teacher in 2nd grade will give a birthday pie, CFA. And then they assess it based on these proficiency scales. But that's how we're trying to get that equitable, and like it won't matter which class your child goes in. They should be receiving that level, that same level.
Very little subjectivity there between
Yes.
the teachers. I like it. I know this is a lot of work, so thank you all for that. But it's good. You can look at that and see really easily, hey, this student is green, it's got M's across the early
Right.
assessment.
Or they drop off.
And then you can also look at the class as a whole. Hey, here's the October 20-something, and there's a lot of yellows, and
Right.
then here's the next, there's a lot of greens, a lot of
And
M's
it
going to it.
starts like
You
that.
can see individual students or the class as a whole, so. I think
And
it's really good.
even, skill-wise, we looked at a student, Dustin and I did, everything in math was high, and then subtraction. And that was like those students where it dropped just a little. So if you were gonna tell a parent, what could I do to help my kiddo?
Sure.
They need to work on subtraction fluency.
It's great data,
Super
so,
easy. You
yeah.
could tell it in 5 seconds. You could tell like what that student.
So
might
thanks for that work. That's good.
So, it's been really fun. It's, not not all there. We're getting there. We have still quite a bit of work to do, but.
I mean, it's hard work, and I think yesterday, Ms. Russell and I heard brick by brick. So little at a time, just don't quit building.
Very
Okay,
good.
anything else?
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good job, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I got just one,
Yeah.
kind of a general. I mean, obviously, the goal is we do a little better this year than we did last year. I mean, that's kind of the focus. Are we reinventing the wheel in our testing here? Are we just tweaking it a little bit? It looks like we got a major overhaul of how we're moving ahead with testing and
You mean
and
like
performance and
the
where's the
grade level
bar?
testing, like this kind of testing, like the common formative assessment
Well, I'm looking at a
type,
couple
or-
different things. The
Some
other
of-
testing had a, like the one test had a plus or minus 10% on the,
Yeah.
or
The
on
Atlas
the
is, I mean, that's been a
consistency.
curveball, because no one has taken it, and they, in our opinion, we would say, for those of us that are trying to like lead teachers through that and students, they have been behind. You know, some of the markers of information they said they would have ready, it wasn't ready when they said it would be ready, and there's nothing we can do, we just have to wait.
I'm looking at a lot of colors up there and don't really understand it, but I did go, wait, that top left doesn't look good to me. It was a lot of red and yellow.
Yes,
I mean,
and-
is that
and
something
so
you can identify, or are we
one-
moving to
Well,
a
one of the
consistent?
classes, one of the classes I showed you is what we call a co-taught class. There are a lot of students in that class that have IEPs, and so they do have some push-in help from a special ed teacher. And so some of their individual learning needs are being addressed in an IEP plan for that student. And so, you know, you take that into account too when you're looking at their data. Their data will look a little different. And then that's where you have to work with that special ed teacher. And that's why it's great they're in the classroom and they can see what is grade level expectation, because they can try to keep that student as close to grade level as possible. And so that's where some of the reds are coming in. Yeah, we do, I mean, I would tell you, we have more red than we want to have, and that's fine.
Well, it's not even about that, but next year, we're building like a new system, it seems like to me, to look at, a new model to look at things. Am I correct in that assumption?
Well,
Two different
this
things.
isn't new, this work is not new. The Atlas test is new, yes.
But that's not for K2
No.
right now.
K2 is not.
This is
taking
like,
that
this
test.
is almost daily work at times too. I can do daily work and get some information from it, the data from it. The Atlas test is separate. That's like, that's brand new, that's.
And they're gonna take
Great.
that one time at the
Yeah.
end of the year. And so what we know as teachers, you can't wait until the end of the year to see how your students are doing. It's too late. You're already passing them on.
Right.
And so that's why everything we've been learning in education lately is you've gotta go to these targets that let you stop and assess if your students are getting it or not. And if they're not getting it, then you need to slow down and make a new plan. You can't just keep going. If half your class is showing they did not get that fluency piece in subtraction, why are you going on to the next thing? You need to work on that before you're moving
I
forward.
guess my whole point is, let's have consistent targets, if we're doing this, you know,
Welcome
rather
to
than,
education.
well, so we can measure, did we do better or not?
Well,
about
now the
trying to
state
figure it out.
actually
The state
came
gives
out,
the target.
those standards that are at the top of that graph
Mhm.
have been, the state has given us directive on that, the State Department has.
Mhm.
So they are trying to pull us, you know, when you talk about essential standards, well, I might pick one that Ms. Dewey doesn't pick. Well, who's to say who's right there? Well, the state has come in and kind of said, these really are more what you need to focus on for that grade level. And then that should reflect in the state test they're giving us at the end of the year. So they are trying to put a little bit of a perimeter around some of that for sure, because it is so vast. I mean, you know, those decisions, even deciding what your central standards are gonna be takes, I mean, days and days and days. and
It's a lot of
days.
work, I appreciate it, for me to look at some reds and yellows in the left-hand corner and lots of blues and greens in the right hand. But that's, if that's helpful, that's where we need to go.
All right, anything else? Figure out how to unmute my computer.
Thank you, Judy.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, Ms. Cotter, top that with your financial reports.
Make it colorful.
Speaking of subtraction.
We don't want to see any red.
Yeah, where's, no red.
No red on your financial report, please.
Could you color code?
Tough crowd.
Yeah.
We want it all. We have a quorum. Oh, hello. Meeting has duly been called, appropriate notice has been given. If you please stand for the pledge. All right.
No, we already did it.
We're reruns already.
We have a quorum.
Hello.
Meeting has duly been called, appropriate notice has been given. If you please stand for the pledge.
We have to work on that
This is just our backup. That's the backup.
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I have it approved for the agenda? I have got to work on that voice.
Groundhog Day.
Would you like your laptop to say your screen is being observed?
Everything's observed. Everything we do.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We'll start with 2B, changes, statement of changes in fund balance for the month ending November 30th, 2023. We ended the month of November with $17,758,735.84. To highlight a few things from the month of November, in Fund 2001 in revenue, we received $6 million for our tax settlement for the month of November. Also, we've had lots of conversations during board meetings about the aviation program, and so I don't remember pointing out that Fund 2340 is where we have that aviation grant, and so you can see that they've been working on utilizing those funds for that program. And I checked that today, and I think they've got maybe about $12,000 left, so they're doing really good getting that applied to the program. And then also, I would point out that in Fund 4000, we had our debt service payment that we always pay in the month of November. And then the next one you would see in the month of May. Moving on to 2B1, statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the month ending November. We had total revenues in November of $7,964,392.29, with total expenditures of $5,742,203.73. Moving on to page 2B2. This is our fund balance tracking sheet. We ended the month of November with $10,774,954.43. And then moving on to our activity funds, we ended the month of November with all funds combined of $535,266.28. Then the following pages that you have are the system report that backs up the information on the previous pages, as well as the check register for the month of November.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Cotter?
Thank you, Leah.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Leah.
You're welcome.
All right, enrollment report.
So current enrollment is 3,823 students. I did go ahead and look at the second page of the enrollment report. I wanted to point out that that is traditionally, if you look from November to December, we have had a decrease, a slight decrease for the past 4 years. We did have 1 year when we didn't, but I've kind of been watching to see if those trends stay the same, and it does appear that they are.
All right. Mr. Knight, facility Oops, student transfers.
So, this month,
Yeah, we get to do the,
we have 6 students out and 2 in. 6 out, 2 in. The 2 coming in are new to us. The 6 going out, there are 2 family groups. One for a work, mom's got a job, dad got a job in the school. And the other, it was the 4-day week because of some medical needs, some medical trips. So that's 5 of the 6, and then 1 has never been in our district at all. That was out. So.
okay. Any questions? Okay, Mr. Knight.
All right, so on the security doors that we've been installing, you can see we have a couple schools completely complete. Kingston should be up and going next week. I think that probably when we get back from break, we'll start changing out the actual locks, the keys, and turn them on, so all the kinks should be worked out with those. Everything is completely pre-wired except for the high school, and then that crew will be here working over Christmas break, so hopefully it'll go faster. And remember that the high school is huge compared to all the rest of the school, so that'll take the longest. Leah and I also got everything uploaded to the state that they needed to reimburse us, and they told us to try to be expecting that time in January. So that'll be a good chunk of change. The track's completely done. Striping is finished. It looks great. So I know that's been a nightmare. I want to remind everybody, if anyone happens to be here in the next 8 to 10 years, whoever gets to replace that, it's going to be at least double that price because you will have to rip up the asphalt and repave it. That was our last kind of cheap one. Smoke detection in the big top, which is one of the requirements for the state to give us back control of that, is it was not installed over Thanksgiving. They're going to install it over this Christmas break. And then I found a fire engineer out of Northwest Arkansas. And his first walkthrough will be Wednesday. So we'll, probably next month, I'll be able to tell you what we think that product is going to be. Those 2 things get done. We should get a letter from the state. And I know we've been kind of hanging on to the building fund balance for a long time. So when that gets here, I went ahead and updated the spreadsheet. We have a lot of projects that we could do over the summer that we've been sitting on, for you all to kind of think about and decide how much you want to spend and where you want to put it, if you want to spend that money. So a lot of those are, I mean, you see, I'll try to get more prices in there too, but you know, just we have the engineer design for a few of those. So just that HVAC, when I got it engineered, was $250,000 if you want to go there. And I've got the plans for both those other 2. They're already done too. So I'm trying to get you some prices, and you guys can think about that.
I do want to point out the Hackler awning
Yes.
is out for bid. So if we have anybody watching or live stream,
Yeah, we'll get
Ms.
that-
Steiner's
we'll get
awning
that there real soon.
is almost here.
I'm hoping we'll get to bring that to you next month. But then we decided, we do know that even if I don't get it to you till February, spring break is gonna be the big part of that install, because it does require some concrete, and there's like a 7-day cure time.
For the awning?
For an awning, yeah. So the car riders don't do that.
Right.
Yeah. We're trying to match it exactly, and those were custom built, of course, right?
Any questions for Mr. Knight?
On the access control, that's finished, when the fire alarm goes off, does it release the doors and open them?
It will, yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah, and we've even,
Question.
I think one time, you know, we had like those man traps that you walk in. I noticed that there were some pulls there, and we moved those in the past just because I thought, anybody
Right.
could walk in, pull the
And
fire
pull
alarm
out
on
lock
doors.
building,
and so,
right.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Knight.
Thank you.
All right. Might as well stay there, since we're going to have board action items. Request to approve facilities master plan.
Okay, so this is the one we read the last couple months. Nothing changed. You guys didn't have any questions or comments on that last time, so it's the same. I want you to remind you all that is kind of a wish list. I know there are some things we are gonna do on it, but it is a wish list, and we are, it's a living document, it changes, we'll change it as we need to, as things come up. So, recommending you approve the new master plan as presented.
Move we approve the master plan as presented.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Knight. Ms. Cotter, request to approve the 2022-24 related party disclosures.
It was recently brought to my attention, we had a school employee that has a little business that the school might be interested in working with her. So tonight, I've brought to you a board resolution asking for your approval to do business with Shelley Jones of SJ Leather Creations.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the resolution to do business with Leather Creations.
Second.
Daniel, Jason, do I have any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Request to approve Section 8.0 policy update.
We've had some discussions in the CPPC recently about adding some classified members to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee has always been made up of certified teachers, basically, and then financial people at central office. So just during some salary stuff and stuff in the past, we felt it would be good to bring two classified members on the committee that can help relay information financial-wise back to classified employees. So we modified our 8.0 to reflect those changes of adding two members on that. And just some notes, the members that will serve on that will not serve on CPPC. They will be separate
Okay.
members all the time. And then we're going to, we've kind of assigned two people to that the first time until we get out of rotation and do nominations and voting and stuff in the future. So the CPP will kind of handle that part of it, but it will always be separate members. So I'd like to recommend that you approve that change to 8.0 to include classified members.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the update to section 8.0.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Request to approve Section 8.11 policy update.
This is just a policy that during going through policies that hasn't been updated since 2006. It's strictly an ASBA policy. There weren't any mountain home modifications to it. They've basically just added more clarification and definition to the policy. So we would just like to recommend if you would approve that, those changes to 8.11.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion we accept the recommendation as submitted.
I'll second.
Jason and Scott, do I have any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Steve. Request for proposed salary schedule adjustment, Ms. Dewey.
So we know that school safety and security is the utmost concern in our district. A district employee who works collaboratively with local law enforcement would provide additional layers of support to our already present law enforcement team. This employee could oversee all district security initiatives, school site assessments, district crisis plan, compliance with state and local school safety policies. We know that Lawrence has added quite a bit to that position as far as school safety goes, which is a good thing.
Mhm.
So before I give my recommendation, I did want you all to remind you all that this is a proposal. It will go to CPPC, and if they choose to add it to their salary schedule or to accept that proposal, they would come back to you, and it then would be officially added if you approved at that time. I also want to make sure before I make my recommendation that this is not a new position today. This is just putting something on the salary schedule, so it's there in case the board chooses to move ahead with hiring of someone for that position. So I recommend that the board accept a salary schedule addition proposal for a future district security and safety officer.
Coordinator.
Coordinator, what did I say?
Officer.
Sorry, I apologize. Coordinator.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we accept the salary schedule addition proposal for a future district security and safety coordinator.
I'll second.
All right, do I have any discussion?
Are these numbers, are these gonna be competitive? Like, if we decide to add that, is this where are we at on the salary schedule for a position of this type?
So I'd kind of like to share a couple of things that direction. First of all, this would, the only way I would come to you with anybody would be if one of our current SROs happened to leave. Because we don't need an 8th person. I mean, that would be nice, but the reality is a 7th person. If anybody were to leave, we would look at this position. Currently, we are paying half of the salary for all of our SROs. So I did consider that when drawing this up. What would it cost the district? What more would it cost the district? So after talking to, actually, Officer Holland, I got a number where generally new officers start at the PD, and 2 to 3 years experience, new officers at the MHPD anywhere from $18 to $20 an hour. So based on that, looking at 205-day contract, trying to figure out, where would somebody with the kind of experience that we're looking for, what kind of money would they need? Went ahead and started this at $19.50 an hour. And then, of course, that goes up based on experience.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Dewey.
Thank you, guys.
Board discussion. Got any? No?
Nothing?
Our presenters did a great job down in Little Rock at ASBA, so those that presented, thank you. Did an awesome job representing our district. So.
In terms of the,
Same thing. As I debrief, is it worth going down there and the cost and doing all that? I think it absolutely is. Both teams did a great job. I mean, and it was educational for me on both of them. I mean, whether it was for anything else, but I think it just showcases some of what we're doing is worth doing again.
and since this is the last board meeting before the Christmas break, I just want to say, Ms. Dewey, thank you to you and all the staff of the district for, this is my first 2 quarter semesters here, but I felt that we've had a really good one. So thank you for you and to all the staff of the district for all the work that's been put in. Go home, spend the holidays with the people you love, rest and relax, and let's get after it in January. So thank you, Ms. Dewey.
Anyone else? All right, superintendent's update and board discussion further.
Yeah, we get a little typo there, don't we? So we've had a very busy month, as you know, from Thanksgiving to Christmas. I sent one of those little Instagram or things to our leadership team that have been floating around the internet, and it said, teachers and school people, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's like, that Mario Kart game where the music speeds up at the end? That's kind of how they feel. Yeah. And I thought that perfectly described how our folks are feeling right now. It's been a race. Our trip to ASBA was fantastic. A special thank you to Mr. Gage, Mr. Gerald Gage, Mr. McCarn, Mr. Chester, and Mr. Douglas Muir for presenting concerning our aviation pathway. And then our Wings magazine was featured in another breakout session, and a special thanks to Miss Jennifer Crawford for making that happen, and Mr. Schmetzky was an amazing backup for her on that day. He was there if he needed her.
That's right.
So, Miss Russell and I made a trip to Little Rock yesterday to continue our learning on the PLC process. And then our Solution Tree representative, Miss Emily Feltner, was here today, working with our administration as you saw what Miss Lawrence is doing in her building. We are working towards that professional learning community for this entire district, making sure that we are helping teachers become the best version of themselves in the classroom, which in turn increases student achievement. And that is what professional learning communities are for, is that collaboration to allow those things to happen. So I do think it's been a fantastic first semester. I want to thank our school community, and I want to thank the board for the hard work and support to make it as great as it's been. And happy holidays to all. And I'm excited about the upcoming new year, and we've got work to do. So it's going to be a good one, but we'll be busy.
Rest up.
Rest up. We got
Enjoy
work
the
to do,
family.
folks.
Yes. All right. We will adjourn for executive session to talk about personnel.